Good day and thank you for joining us today for the launch of our newest report. The extensive report titled Nowhere is Safe, the Myanmar Junta's Crimes Against Humanity Following the Coup d'etat is jointly published by Fortify Rights and Schell Center at Yale Law School. Nowhere is Safe includes new details and leaked information. I am Vanessa, Regional Director at Fortify Rights, and I'll be the moderator for this event. Before we begin, I would like to share a 2-minute video that succinctly describes the report. The video is prepared by our in-house multimedia team. Here we go.
Democracy အစိုးရကိုအာဏာသိမ်းပြီး
Welcome back. We are certain the report makes new contributions that will bring justice to the people of Myanmar. Before I start with some technical notes, I would like to just inform everyone in the audience that we have some technical difficulties at the moment bringing Htoo and Ma Tuza into the panelists right now, but we are resolving the issue and they should be joining us in a few minutes' time. Before starting, I would like to share some technical notes. First of all, simultaneous Burmese-English interpretation is available for this event. Attendees can select the audio channel to listen in Burmese or English by clicking the globe logo on the menu bar at the bottom of the video screen. Now, we have a great panel of 6 speakers lined up for today's event. Panelists will speak for 5 minutes each and will take questions at the end of all the presentations. We are happy to collect questions from the audience, and you can do it using the chat function in Zoom or Facebook. They can be in English or Burmese, and our team will help to pass the questions on to me. And if you would like to ask a question verbally, please click the raise hand button, and it can be found like at the bottom of the Zoom chat, Zoom screen. So if you click raise hand, we'll unmute your microphone and you can speak during the question and answer part of the discussion. And when asking a question, please, we ask you to identify yourself and your affiliation and indicate to whom you would like to direct the question to. We are also giving priority to working journalists, so please identify yourself if you are a member of the media. I would also like to remind everyone that this event will be recorded. Upon conclusion, you can find it on Fortify Rights YouTube channel. This event is also available now live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We are extremely honored to introduce a wonderful panel of speakers with us today. Before handing it over to the speakers, I would like to first introduce all of them based on the order of appearance. Firstly, we have Tom Andrews joining us as the keynote speaker today. Tom is the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar, and he is also the Robina Senior Fellow at Schell Center. As the human rights situation in Myanmar becomes more severe by day, Tom has not only consistently pushed for a stronger, more meaningful course of action by the international community, but also in his position as a senior human rights fellow, engaged students and others at Yale Law School. That's in the spirit of improving the lives of everyone in Myanmar. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tom. Also with us is Matthew Smith, CEO and co-founder of Fortify Rights. Matt has worked in Southeast Asia since 2005, and his work has exposed genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other human rights violations. Matt has written for numerous media outlets, and he is the co-author of Nowhere is Safe. He will be sharing with you some of the report findings. Hi, Matt. Now, next we have Nickey Diamond. Nickey is my former colleague at Fortify Rights, and he's now a member of our board of directors. Nickey is a scholar on hate speech and genocide in Myanmar. He is a well-known and respected human rights defender and civil society activist from Myanmar. So Nickey is also a co-author of Nowhere is Safe. Hi, Nickey. Next, we have Roger Polack, visiting human rights fellow at the Schell Center, senior legal counsel for the Myanmar Human Rights Project. Roger has an extensive experience working on public international law and investigations. While in private legal practice, he was part of the team that sued Russia in ICJ for its human rights violation in Ukraine. And he led the legal analysis of crimes against humanity and genocide against the Rohingya. In our 2018 report, They Gave Them Long Swords, and in the 2019 report, So Like Fish. He is also the co-author of Nowhere is Safe. Thank you, Roger, for joining us. Now, we have a technical issue. So the next panelist who's supposed to come after Roger is not with us at this point, but I would like to move forward to introduce Htoo. So Htoo is the program director at Karen Human Rights Group, KHRG. KHRG is a grassroots Karen-led human rights organization established in 1992, and it's operating across Southeast Myanmar. KHRG has 30 years of experience and is recognized internationally as a leading group on human rights issues in Southeast Myanmar. KHRG was nominated twice for Nobel Peace Prize in 2000 and 2001, and it was awarded the 2013 Asia Democracy and Human Rights Award by Taiwan Foundation for Democracy. And that award was for their significant contributions to the advancements of human rights or democracy in Asia through peaceful means. Htoo is also a spokesperson for the Karen Peace Support Network, which is the largest network of Karen civil society organization in Myanmar. Hi, Htoo. Thank you for joining us. Now, I would like to, she's not here at this point, but maybe for me to just introduce her, and as we wait for her to join in the call. So the last member of the panel, who's currently not here on the panel at the moment, is from the People's Soldier Wives Group. She can't show her face, so when she joined, we will not see her face. And she would like to be called Matuza. So Matuza is not her real name. So People's Soldiers Wives Group was started by Myanmar military wives who had turned against its leadership following the coup. They have mostly remained silent since the first coup, fearing retaliation. So when Matuza joined later, she will share her view as a family member of a military soldier. Now, with these introductions, I would like to invite the UN Special Rapporteur and Robina Senior Fellow at Yale Law School, Tom Andrews, to give his keynote speech to kickstart the panel discussion. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. It is an honor to join my colleagues in releasing Nowhere is Safe, a truly seminal report that focuses on the first 6 months of the Myanmar military junta's brutal attack on the people of Myanmar. As you will hear today, Nowhere is Safe exposes horrific details of crimes committed by the junta, draws on new information from military sources, and conducts a transparent and thorough legal analysis that will be available to assist in future prosecutions. Just a few days ago, the US Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, issued a formal determination by the United States government that the brutal attacks against the Rohingya ethnic minority of Myanmar in 2016 and 2017 were indeed a genocide. The man who currently heads the illegal military junta of Myanmar that launched an attempted coup 13 and a half months ago, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, oversaw this genocide in Rakhine State as the commander of the troops that carried out these barbaric acts. He now leads the military forces that carried out the horrific crimes that this report documents. Horrific crimes that continue to destroy and shatter lives in communities throughout Myanmar. It is fitting that this report is released almost 1 year to the day after the military junta's Armed Forces Day massacre. On March 27, 2021, as military leaders celebrated themselves at galas with some foreign dignitaries in attendance, Myanmar military and police were murdering, injuring, and detaining hundreds of Myanmar people throughout the country. Indeed, junta forces made good on the warning that was issued to protesters 24 hours prior on state television, and I quote, "You should learn from the tragedy of earlier ugly deaths that you can be in danger of getting shot in the head and back," unquote. All told, forces under the junta's command murdered at least 140 civilians on that day alone. Using the horrendous example of that massacre and too numerous and many, many other acts of violence, this report lays out how and why there are reasonable grounds to believe that the Myanmar military, under the command of Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, has committed the crimes of murder, imprisonment, torture, persecution, deportation, and forcible transfer of the population as part of a widespread and systematic attack against the people of Myanmar. Those who have followed the news of the military's brutal and sustained assault on the people of Myanmar will find at least some of the accounts in this report familiar. The cold-blooded murders of innocent men, women, and children, the ruthless torture of political prisoners, the unmitigated nationwide attack on civilians. Nevertheless, seeing the experiences of eyewitnesses and survivors documented in this report in painstaking detail, one after the other, is chilling. Even more chilling in this report, however, is what will not be familiar to most, such as the premeditated, systematic nature of the junta's attack, testimony from soldiers on the deployment of snipers to kill and terrorize people, and even a Myanmar military fieldcraft manual obtained by Fortify Rights instructing soldiers to, quote, "make sure a bullet equates to an enemy killed," unquote. The enemy in this case are the people of Myanmar. Starting with Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, "Nowhere is Safe" identifies 61 high-ranking military and police officials who should be investigated and potentially held criminally liable for crimes against humanity. It is an honor to be releasing this report with my Schell Center for International Human Rights colleague, Roger Polack, who led the team that conducted the legal analysis of these crimes out of Yale Law School, where the Schell Center for International Human Rights is based. We are both honored to have worked on this project with Matt Smith and Amy Smith, who lead Fortify Rights, and their Fortify Rights colleagues and teammates who spend an enormous amount of time researching and documenting the truly horrific crimes that are contained in this report and those who perpetrated them. They and countless others are part of an international movement of people of conscience who are committed to pursuing justice and accountability with and for the people of Myanmar. It is a true honor to work with all of them. If there were any doubts about whether the junta's crackdown constitutes mass atrocity crimes, this report should lay them to rest. The actions of the military junta of Myanmar in the first 6 months that followed their attempted coup should be called what they truly are: crimes against humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. That's a compelling and extremely strong message to send. Tom has an incredibly busy schedule and he will have to sign off at this point. Once again, we thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day ahead, Tom. Next, I'll hand it over to Matt, Roger, and Nickey as the co-author to share the report findings and recommendations. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you, Tom. And thanks to the other panelists and to all of you for taking time to tune in with us here today. The Myanmar military poses a threat to international peace and security. And one would think at this point that governments around the world would not need to hear this, but unfortunately they still do. And they need to act with the same urgency that they've demonstrated, that we've seen demonstrated for the people of Ukraine. This report provides evidence, as we've heard, of serious international crimes. It identifies who's responsible for those crimes. It identifies physical locations of military units nationwide, and it makes detailed recommendations to governments as well as the junta, which, it must be said, is not the government of Myanmar. I'd like to say at the outset that this report is a culmination of a massive team effort. In the early weeks and months of the coup, literally every member of the Fortify Rights team mobilized to collect evidence day and night of atrocities and respond to the urgent needs of those who are under attack by the Myanmar junta. My colleagues Zaw Win, John Quinley, Ishmael Wolf, Zal Moran, Nickey Diamond, Amy Smith, Vanessa Chong, Yuri Kato, many other team members, too many to list here, along with Roger and his team at the Schell Center, also had a hand in the research, writing, and production of this report. As Vanessa mentioned, we're confident that the work being done to document the crimes committed by the junta will eventually lead to justice in Myanmar. Because, of course, right now, impunity is a scourge in the country. The people of Myanmar know better than anyone that impunity has grown and mutated over the years, from periods of direct military rule to quasi-democracy, culminating in what is the deadliest variant yet in this current military junta. We do wholly agree with US Secretary of State Blinken, who, as Tom mentioned on Monday this week, acknowledged that the Rohingya genocide is fundamental to Myanmar's current crisis. Also fundamental are the decades of atrocities experienced by all of Myanmar's ethnic nationalities. This report focuses on the first 6 months following the military coup on February 1st, 2021. It does make new contributions to collective efforts to ensure justice and accountability for the junta's atrocities since the coup. Specifically, we identify 61 senior military and police officials who should be investigated and possibly prosecuted for international crimes. We established the locations of 1,040 military units nationwide. We reveal new information about the military chain of command during the crackdown on peaceful protesters throughout the country. In great detail, we document acts of murder, torture, imprisonment, enforced disappearance, forced population transfer, and persecution. And we provide what is the most thorough legal analysis to date of the junta's widespread and systematic attacks on the people of Myanmar in the first 6 months after the coup, which you'll hear more about. We interviewed 128 survivors of violations, eyewitnesses, protesters, medical professionals, members of armed resistance forces, former members of the military, police, Navy, located in 30 townships in 13 of the country's 14 states and regions, in addition to Naypyidaw Union territory. In preparing this report, we also communicated with 6 active duty military personnel, including a lieutenant colonel commanding a battalion, 3 captains and 2 majors. We obtained leaked military documents, some of which instruct forces to commit crimes. We also collected more than 1,100 data points of open source information about specific incidents of human rights violations shared on social media. And we analyzed all this evidence under international criminal law. The title of this report, Nowhere is Safe, comes from a 25-year-old woman in Mandalay. And she described how she and 5 members of her family huddled on the 2nd floor of their home when they saw military and police roll into their otherwise quiet neighborhood. In broad daylight, 4 police officers and 1 army soldier kicked down the front door of their home in Chamatazi Township, fired 2 shots, and entered the upstairs room where the family was gathered. The officers brutally beat and arrested her 21-year-old brother. They dragged his unconscious body out of the home and shot and killed their 7-year-old sister as she sat in her father's lap. The family, of course, fled. And the 25-year-old woman that I had mentioned told us, and I quote, "That night, we were hiding with the dead body of my sister. We couldn't sleep. There were mosquitoes. We were told not to come back to our house because they were searching for us. We couldn't even get help from other families because there was a dead body with us. So we just had to hide in the forest." She added to this, and again, I quote, "They dragged away my brother and killed my sister. We're now at a hideout place where it is supposed to be safe. Actually, nowhere is safe." Survivor after survivor interviewed for this report shared harrowing accounts of military and police atrocities. And then they would add things like, "They're ruthless. I'm not safe. We're crying every day. This is inhumanity. They're trying to kill the next generation." So these are just tiny samples of things people said to us while we're documenting the violations presented in this report today. I just want to add also that this is not merely a human rights report. These are people's lives upended, destroyed, in some ways, in many ways, and always forever changed. Medical doctors in Myanmar told us how numerous victims, mostly peaceful protesters in the streets, were fatally shot in the head or chest with a single bullet, indicating consistent, deadly precision and intent to kill. Military deserters told us how the military deployed snipers to murder protesters as a matter of state policy and to instill fear among the population. The junta also systematically imprisoned several thousand people, including children, elected officials, peaceful protesters, journalists, lawyers, human rights defenders, and others. During this investigation, we also obtained and independently verified the authenticity of 3 leaked internal memos from the Myanmar police force, which is of course controlled by the military, ordering officers to arbitrarily arrest protesters, members of the National League for Democracy, and specific human rights defenders. One memo ordered police to join with the military to, quote, "clear up and detain protest organizers," which is, of course, exactly what they did. 2 other internal memos circulated in different parts of the country contain identical language instructing officers to arrest protest leaders and conduct night raids on homes, an example of the systematic nature of the attack. The Myanmar military and police also tortured civilians. Since the coup, we include in this report firsthand testimony from survivors and eyewitnesses of torture. We analyze additional evidence, including video footage of torture. Other violations documented in the report include enforced disappearance, persecution, enforced transfer, deportation. The 61 military and police officials named in the report as potentially liable for crimes against humanity include the coup leader, Commander-in-Chief Min Aung Hlaing, Deputy Commander-in-Chief So Win, and the Joint Chief of Staff, General Mya Tun Oo. These men are also responsible for the Rohingya genocide, as well as other atrocities perpetrated in the country. Other military and police suspects identified in the report are 19 regional commanders of the police force, 13 regional commanders from the military, 27 other senior officials from the junta. Of the 61 military and police officials identified in the report, only 20 have been sanctioned by at least one government. So I'll end here by saying that these attacks are not dissimilar to what the military did to the Rohingya people and what the military did for years to the Chin, Kachin, Karen, Mon, Shan, Rakhine, and others. This is how the military rules or attempts to rule. It's a violent criminal institution. It should be treated as such by UN member states, especially ASEAN. Murderers should face trial, and when you commit mass atrocities while unlawfully imprisoning elected leaders, invoking state sovereignty or internal affairs will not protect you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. So I'll now hand over to the next speaker, Nickey. Nickey has spoke very hard with Matt and our team on the report. So over to you, Nickey.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I'm very honored to be on a great panel with all esteemed speakers today. Fortify Rights in the Yale School Schell Center for International Human Rights published a full report of Myanmar military crime against civilians in Myanmar during the first 6 months since their attempted coup on February 1st, 2021. This report lists all the detailed evidence and testimony of victims and survivors of the Myanmar military terror and their use of terrorism against civilians. For this report, Fortify Rights and Schell Center also incorporated leaked military classified documents and included information from the so-called watermelon, those who are green outside referring to the military clothes, military uniform, but red inside referring to their anti-coup settlement. These are active duty military officers and those who are disagreed with Myanmar line and the use of state administration counsel terror against civilians, but for various reasons remain part of the armed forces. The Myanmar military is responsible for protecting our civilian and our country, but they have turned violent and are killing civilians. They are arbitrarily imprisoning peaceful protesters. They are torturing them during interrogation. They disappear them, and they are targeting IDPs. I thank embedded military personnel known as watermelon contribution to this report and valuable their insider knowledge and information. Without their assistance, it would be tough to establish the military command structure and to list all perpetrators who are responsible for committing crime against humanity. Today, a report from Fortify Rights and the Schell Center exposed the whereabouts of the Myanmar military regional commands, the military operation command, the light infantry division, light infantry battalion, the infantry battalion. This is the first time that these locations are being made publicly available. Fortify Rights and Schell Center believe this information may help any prosecutor to geolocate military unit physical proximity to any atrocity crime scene in Myanmar. It is also essential for future documentation as the Myanmar military terror against civilians is ongoing. Fortify Rights Schell Center also established new information about the so-called Special Command. According to reliable and credible sources, Myanmar Line, as a coup leader, founded the Special Command in Naypyidaw, which is led by 4 senior generals: Vice Senior General So Win, General Myathong U, General Mau A, and Lieutenant General Mo Mien Tom, to respond to the widespread reaction to the establishment of the State Administration Council and the military attempted coup. Especially this special command was provided with military authority to deploy and command troops in civilian populated cities, townships, where soldiers have not typically been operational. Without order from this special command, no other in the chain of command had authority to move troops into civilian populated city and townships in Myanmar. On March 21, the United States marked the Myanmar military committed genocide and crime against humanity against Rohingya. In recent years, human rights researchers from various organizations have worked hard to document various atrocity crimes commissioned by the military. Inside Myanmar, before the military coup, only a few activists and human rights defenders have taken side with the Rohingya people. The documentation of human rights abuses matter in regarding the Myanmar military terror, such as after the attempted coup and the genocide committed against the Rohingya people. Without justice and accountability for these victims and survival, they can't hope for a fully federal democratic country. The Myanmar military have a long history of human rights violation against religious and ethnic minority, even though local international researcher organizations documented and reported their crime. The international community, the UN Security Council, has until today not been able to prevent such atrocity crime from happening. Historically speaking, this failure to take significant and effective legal and legitimate action against the Myanmar military, especially individual general responsible for these crimes, is discouraging. Still, it is worth continuing our fight for justice to end this culture of impunity. I firmly believe that this is the time to take side with the victim and survival, and this is the time to take any legal and legitimate action against the military general and perpetrator responsible for genocide, war crime against humanity in Myanmar. All our failure will be recorded in history, but the victim and survivor also remember our efforts. In Myanmar, fighting against the military culture impunity is a process. Well, we have to make progress. Why international and local human rights organizations are recklessly making progress in producing these kinds of human rights reports? The international community, US, UK, EU should listening to the voices coming out of Myanmar and support our revolution. The ongoing fight against military terror and their terrorism, the international community should respect the will of the Myanmar people. People from Myanmar have already proved that the military coup is not successful. What else do you need? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nickey. Nickey's message on the international inaction is loud and clear. Our next speaker, Roger, will discuss the legal implications of the violence perpetrated by the Myanmar security forces. So welcome, Roger. Over to you.
Thank you, Vanessa. It's a real honor to share this virtual stage with all of you as we present Nowhere is Safe. It's been an even greater honor to work with the team from Fortify Rights on this report. And while I had the privilege of leading the legal analysis, it's really a product of work done by many international lawyers, including Lucia Shopchov, Betsy Feuerstein, Jessica So, and a team from Sidley Austin LLP. I'm grateful for their tireless contributions. The legal team and I analyzed the human rights violations that Matt described and that are presented as testimony in the report, testimony that is frequently in the survivors, witnesses, or family members' own words. We analyzed the junta's attacks against standards set forth in the statute that established the International Criminal Court, that is the Rome Statute. We compared the acts committed by the junta against precedent from over 50 cases heard at the ICC and ad hoc tribunals that examine atrocities in the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, East Timor, Cambodia, Sierra Leone, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and others. And when comparing the gravity of the violence the junta committed against the Rome Statute's requirements and situations worldwide where crimes against humanity have been found, we found that there are reasonable grounds to believe that forces under the command of the Myanmar junta committed crimes against humanity of murder, imprisonment, torture, enforced disappearance, persecution, and forcible transfer and deportation of a population throughout their violent crackdown and repression in the first 6 months of the coup. I'll go into just two of the acts here in a little more detail, murder and persecution, but I encourage all of you to read the report as much as you can, and we're here to take questions afterwards as well. Looking to precedent, the ICC explained in a case involving massacres in the Congo that murder occurs where a perpetrator acts in order to cause the death of one or more persons, or was aware that death would occur in the ordinary course of events. As Matt said, the junta consistently used military snipers and live ammunition in shooting deaths of protesters. Doctors that treated protesters and eyewitnesses to shootings reported that many deaths were from single bullet wounds above the ear, at the bottom left side of the head, straight through the heart, and on the left side of the chest. The use of snipers and live ammunition in single bullet fatality shots demonstrates that the military meant to kill or knew that death would occur in the ordinary course of events. On March 26, 2021, the day prior to the Armed Forces Day massacre, junta-controlled television broadcasted a threat that Tom earlier read about sniper shootings, and I'll read it again. You should learn from the tragedy of earlier ugly deaths that you can be in danger of getting shot in the head and back. This statement really underscores that the Myanmar Army and police shot protesters with at minimum the knowledge, if not the intent, that death would occur in the ordinary course of the shootings. One witness that we interviewed described a murder on Armed Forces Day in Plang Township, Yangon. He told us, it was about 2:30 p.m. when they started firing bullets into the crowd. About 100 soldiers and 200 police came to the protest. The police had rubber bullets and guns. The military had long firearms. There were also snipers. I saw shooters on a building in our quarter. I saw the shooter and I saw them shooting. There was a man shot 2 feet away from me. The bullet hit his head. It went through the back side of his head. The man was running away and he was shot by a sniper as he was running on the sidewalk. The eyewitness provides the man's name and he concludes, he was 29 years old. He was my friend. Junta forces committed at least 140 other such murders as this one on Armed Forces Day. And this report is full of testimony like this, and I believe it's really one of the report's strongest aspects, the way it gives voice to and individualizes the suffering behind the staggering statistics that we really must not grow accustomed to. These statistics that we read and that are included in this report and that come out every day should really continue to shock and outrage all of us. We spend considerable time unwinding the specific acts of persecution that the junta has undertaken and the methods they use to persecute. One tribunal described the intent of persecution as no less than the, quote, removal of persons from the society in which they live alongside the perpetrators, or eventually from even humanity itself. And that certainly characterizes the junta's approach in Myanmar. We found the junta was targeting individuals for political reasons, and the target group consisted of persons who oppose or are perceived to oppose the coup and military rule. Among them were human rights defenders, activists and protesters, NLD members and elected representatives, CDM healthcare workers and CDM civil servants, student unions, journalists, and others. Now, to constitute a crime against humanity, these acts that Matt has described and I've talked a little bit about, these acts must be done on a widespread or systematic scale against a civilian population with knowledge of the broader attack. Spread, just to unpack that, refers to the large scale nature of the attack and to the number of targeted persons, while systematic refers and reflects the organized nature of the acts of violence and the improbability of their random occurrence. In the report, we use extensive legal precedent where courts have found attacks to be widespread and systematic and show that the junta's attacks have in many instances targeted more individuals over a broader geographic area and for a longer period of time than many of these precedents. To sum up the first 6 months of the attack, as of July 31st, 2021, over 220,000 people were internally displaced as a result of the junta's post-coup violence. The junta had murdered at least 940 people, imprisoned at least 6,994, tortured between 22 and 50 people to death while in detention, and countless others, not to death, but tortured nonetheless, disappeared potentially thousands, and used the tools of the state to engage in widespread persecution throughout the country of anyone opposed to the coup. Within the first 6 months, the junta's attacks reportedly killed or injured individuals in at least 97 townships across 12 of Myanmar's 14 states and regions, plus Naypyidaw. We demonstrate that the attack was also systematic and that it was part of a clearly outlined policy undertaken by an organization, in this case, the junta and its forces, and that the attack was against the civilian population. To help demonstrate that the attacks were committed with knowledge of the broader attack, we highlight that the attack had sustained international media attention and, more importantly, had been since its beginning the main and overarching news issue on domestic social media. Video statements by soldiers on social media frequently contained death threats, expressly addressed to protesters in their activities, and showed or mentioned the weapons that the perpetrators claimed they would utilize to carry out prohibited acts. Military officials, including Min Aung Hlaing, acknowledged the ongoing violence, but blamed it on protesters. And the Global New Light of Myanmar, a junta mouthpiece, also regularly reprinted a news item on the military, police and the fire brigade joining forces to implement countrywide, and I quote, security measures to ensure the state's stability, security of people, the rule of law, and community peace, unquote. Taken together with all these different factors satisfied, we found again that there are reasonable grounds to believe that forces under the junta's command committed crimes against humanity. Those responsible should be investigated and prosecuted. In the report, we discuss the different legal theories for providing and proving individual liability, from command responsibility, where acts are committed by forces under a commander's responsibility and the commander fails to prevent them, to the ordering of attacks, to significantly contributing to them, and to actually carrying them out. Nickey highlighted the formation of the special command. Certainly Min Aung Hlaing and the 4 senior generals who led that command should be top figures for investigation, given the special command's unique role in directing the military attack in cities. But also regional commanders, chiefs of police, and special operations commanders should be high priority targets for investigation and eventual persecution. And again, those are all named in the report. Justice is sorely needed in Myanmar, and we believe that this report could be a helpful roadmap in guiding future investigations. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roger. The next speaker, Matuza, She just joined us. Matuza, thank you for joining us today. I guess we have to give her like a few minutes to prepare herself. Maybe it's good for me to introduce the next speaker first. Notutu from KHRG. So Notutu's presentation will focus on the situation in current state, including present day abuses. So over to you first, Notutu. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm very honored that Fortify Rights and the Schell Center are giving me the opportunity to be part of this press conference. As most of you know, the human rights situation in current state has been a concern. For 30 years, KHRG has documented systematic and intentional violence against the Karen people. The Myanmar military has engaged in unlawful killing, torture, and other forms of abuse, and forced disappearance and arbitrary arrest. The imposition of forced labor, forced relocations, and displacement, sexual violence, including rape, extortions, and the distractions or confiscations of property and food from civilians. For over half a century, generations of villagers in Southeast Myanmar have endured a climate of fear, insecurity, and abuse. Some villagers have lived their entire life with the fear that one day will be displaced again. Karen people are the first ethnic group in Myanmar who received and found an armed force. That's why they were targeted by the junta whiteout operation. Major General Mangla stated in 1994 that in the future, if you want to see Karen people, you will be only able to see them in a museum. KHRG earlier report document about forced relocation campaign by Damaro soldier. This operation objectives were encamping civilians around their army camps. They restricted the possible of attack by the opposition force. This relocation is clearly the first step in declaring entire region of current state free fire zone and launching a massive a new offensive attack in current border area, in which all of the civilians in the relocation camp will surely be used as porter and human minesweeper. Rapes and sexual violence against women by Damaro soldiers was all too common, and villagers are at risk of torture or death as well. On December 31st, 1993, a Karen villager was accused of being a KNU supporter. Damaro soldier tied him up, stabbed him with a knife, banged both of his eyes, and dragged him through the street of the village. They kept him alive 1 week before executing him. So over the past 30 years, KHRG has documented countless of cases similar to this by each successive military regime, as that should be considered crime against humanity. And now, under the current regime, KHRG is again receiving horrific stories of violence against civilians in current state. Just to repeated failure to hold the Myanmar military accountable, the perpetrator of this crime have enjoyed total impunity, allowing the military to renew its war of terror against the Karen people. Repeated airstrike came without warning, and where, as one villager said, that bullets and balls fall from the sky like rain. Villages are being raided and looted, where anything's not taken is destroyed, leaving displaced villagers nothing left when they return home. SSC soldiers increasingly threatened retaliations against civilians, telling civilians that they will burn down the whole village, they will kill them if they were attacked by KNLA. Therefore, turning civilians into retaliatory target of warfare. After the military coup, forced portering, navigations, including the use of civilians as a human shield, are becoming more widespread once again. The SSC soldiers also increasingly forcing villagers to stay in their village during the conflict to protect SSC troops from further attack by ethnic armed groups. Villager has reported hearing SAC commanders order their soldier to shoot villager on site inside their village by imposing the curfew at night. They are threatened to shoot villager found outside of the village at night, claiming that they are enemy to them. So as part of their clearance operations, entire village and area are being bowed, where the SAC suspect NLD leader, CDM participants, and other political activists are hiding. Those suspected of being affiliated with the PDF or KNLA are increasingly being rounded up or brutally tortured and killed. Over KHRG reporting history, KHRG found that civilians, rather than the resistant armies, are the real target of the Myanmar military offensive. The brutal crackdown on protesters and the onslaught of attack on civilians since February 2021 suggest that this is still the case. Since 1992, KHRG has fought to end the military impunity and secure justice for villagers. We applaud this outstanding and much needed report that Fortify Rights and the Schell Center have prepared, and hope that all of us working together can help bring an end to these horrific crimes and ensure that the perpetrators are held accountable. As this report so clearly highlights, until that happens, nowhere is safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Notutu. Notutu's presentation has highlighted the junta's brutal crackdown not only reflects systematic attacks on the opposition, but it's also a terror campaign that continues to be directed towards human rights defenders. For decades, Myanmar human rights defenders have been doing critical work promoting human rights in the country. And since the Feb 1st coup, we see civil servants, students, journalists, medics, artists, filmmakers, singers, civil society workers, everybody from all walks of life, and all bona fide human rights defenders, they have been forced to flee into hiding, leaving loved ones behind. It has been close to 14 months since the coup. This past year, my colleagues and I have heard so many heart-wrenching stories of suffering and destruction. In addition to the acts of crimes against humanity documented in this report, we hear frequent stories of family separation. A young 10-year-old girl was arranged to cross the border when her parents, both activists, were arrested. There was no one left in Myanmar to take care of her, and she's now living away from her family, a stranger on foreign soil, and she has no access to education. A pro-democracy protest leader was choking back tears when he was sharing with me how he was unable to bid farewell to his beloved mother at her funeral. And this story is not unique. Many we spoke to are not only facing physical threats, but also having their properties, including houses and cars, confiscated. Their documents and money were looted while they were away from their home. Bank accounts were frozen. And all this for the activism, the SAC has not only attacked them, but also their family members. Many are suffering from anxiety, depression, different types of trauma, and they do not have enough support to take care of their mental health and well-being. We also hear countless stories of helplessness from those who fled Myanmar. Receiving no protection at all in neighboring countries, they are leading one precarious life to another. As Myanmar heads towards another protracted crisis, human rights defenders and their families continue to struggle in Myanmar, and also on foreign land. Support is definitely inadequate. So right now, I would like to hand over to our speaker from the People's Soldier Wife, Matuza. Matuza will share her perspective as a family member of a military soldier. Over to you, Matuza.
Okay, အားလုံးပဲမင်္ဂလာပါရှင် ကျမကတော့စီလံပြုလုပ်ထားတဲ့ပြည်သူစစ်သားစင်များအဖွဲ့မှာအဖွဲ့ဝင်တူဖြစ်ပါတယ်။ကျမကတော့ဒီအစီအစဉ်မှာကျမတို့မြန်မာပြည်ကြီးရဲ့လက်ရှိဖြစ်ပျက်နေတဲ့အာဏာသိမ်းမှုအကြောင်းရယ်လူအခွင့်အရေးများဆုံးရှုံးနေကြရတဲ့ကျမတို့ပြည်သူတွေကိုအကူအညီပေးဖို့တောင်းဆိုမှုအကြောင်းတွေကိုပြောကြားသွားမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်ရှင်။အာဏာသိမ်းပြီးနောက်ပိုင်းမင်းအောင်လှိုင်ဦးစီးတဲ့စစ်တပ်ဟာဘာကြောင့်စစ်ရာဇဝတ်မှုတွေလူမျိုးတုံးတပ်ဖြတ်မှုတွေကျူးလွန်နေရတာလဲဆိုရင်စစ်သားတွေအားလုံးကအုံနှောက်အစေးခံထားရတာရဲ့စစ်ကောင်စီလက်အောက်ခံတချို့ကပြည်သူအခွန်ဗဏ္ဍာငွေနဲ့လစာရတာတွေစားနေတောက်နေရတာတွေကိုအကြမ်းဖက်စစ်ကောင်ဆောင်ကပေးနေတယ်လို့ထင်နေပြီးတော့အယူဆတလွဲရှိနေတာရဲ့မိသားစုစာဝတ်နေရေးမပြေလည်ကြက်တဲမှုတွေကြောင့်ရဲ့စစ်တီဆိုတာအထက်ကအမိတ်ကိုအမှားအမှန်မဝေဖန်ပဲနာခံရမယ်ဆိုတဲ့အတွေးမျိုးအုံနောက်ထဲမှာရိုက်သွင်းခံထားရတဲ့ကြောင့်တိုင်းပြည်နဲ့ပြည်သူကိုကာကွယ်ရမယ့်အစားပြည်သူလူထုအပေါ်မှာလူမဆန်စွာရက်စက်ရုံမှာရက်စက်ရုံမာတာတွေကိုအခွင့်အရေးယူချိုးဖောက်မှုတွေကိုကျူးလွန်နေတယ်လို့ကျမအနေနဲ့မြင်မိပါတယ်ပေါ့နော်။ဘာသာတရားတိုင်းဟာတဲ့လူအချင်းချင်းမေတ္တာထားဖို့တုံသင်ဆုံးမကြရမှာကြီးပဲပေါ့နော်။ဒါပေမဲ့မင်းအောင်လှိုင်ဦးဆောင်တဲ့အကြမ်းဖက်စစ်တပ်ကတော့ဘယ်ဘာသာတရားအဆုံးအမကိုမှခံယူမဲ့ပုံမပေါ်ဘူး။သူတို့ဟာကောင်းမှုကုသိုလ်တွေကိုဟန်ပြလုပ်ပြမယ်လှူဒန်းပြမယ်ဟန်ဆောင်ကူညီမှုတွေကိုလုပ်ပြတာကိုသူတို့ပိုင်တဲ့မြဝတီရုပ်သံလိုင်းတွေကလွှင့်ပြပါလိမ့်မယ်ဒါဟာဝါဒပြန့်မှုတသက်ပဲအခုဆိုရင်ဘုန်းကြီးကျောင်းတွေခရစ်ယာန်ဘုရားကျောင်းတွေမှာဖျက်ဆီးခံထားရတာအပြင်ဘာသာပေါင်းစုံဘာသာရေးခေါင်းဆောင်တွေအကြမ်းဖက်စစ်တပ်ရဲ့တပ်ဖြတ်ခြင်းခံရတာတွေဟာမြန်မာပြည်မှာအာဏာသိမ်းပြီးကတည်းကလူအခွင့်အရေးနဲ့ဘာသာရေးလွတ်လပ်မှုတွေမရှိခြင်းတွေရဲ့ပြရုပ်တွေပဲလို့ကျမကတော့မြင်မိပါတယ်ယခုမြန်မာပြည်မှာလည်းရွာလုံးကျွတ်မြို့လုံးကျွတ်မိရှုခံရတာတွေဥပမာစကိုင်းတိုင်းတွေကကြေးရွာတွေချင်းပြည်နယ်ကထန်တလန်မိရှုခံရတာတွေကတက်တည်ပါပဲခလေးတငယ်အပါဝင်လူကြီးတွေကိုအရှင်လက်လက်မိရှုတက်ဖြတ်တာတွေခလေးတငယ်များအရွယ်မရောက်သေးသူများတက်ကြီးဘိုးဘွားတွေနဲ့ကိုဝင်ဆောင်မိခင်များပါမကြမ်းတက်ဖြတ်ခံခဲ့ရတာတွေလည်းဒီမောဆိုးကဖြစ်ရက်ကတက်တည်ပါပဲဟိုတရက်ကဆိုရင်ကရင်နီဒေသမှာအလွန်ပြင်းအားပြင်းတဲ့ FAB ဘုံကိုလေရင်နဲ့ပေါ့နော်ကြုံရင်းနဲ့ကျဲချခဲ့တာတွေလည်းရှိခဲ့ပါတယ်မပေါက်ခွဲခဲ့တဲ့ကြံခဲ့တဲ့ဘုံတစ်လုံးကအထောက်ထားပါပဲပေါ့နော်ဒီဟာတွေကပေါ့နော်မြို့တွေကျေးရွာတွေပြည်သူလူထုတွေအပေါ်မှာလေရင်နဲ့အသုံးပြုပြီးဘုံကျဲတိုက်ခိုက်ခြင်းတက်တည်မှတ်တမ်းတွေဖြစ်ပါတယ်ပြည်သူအစုလိုက်အပြုံလိုက်ကိုရုပ်မာတဲ့နည်းလမ်းတွေသုံးပြီးတော့တက်ဖြတ်နေတဲ့ကြီးမားတဲ့စစ်ရာဇဝတ်မှုတွေလည်းဖြစ်ပါတယ်အဲ့ဒီတော့စစ်ကောင်းဆောင်ပိုင်းကစိန်ကြနေချိန်ကြီးပွားချမ်းသာနေချိန်မှာအောက်ခြေစစ်တီတွေကပြည်သူများကိုပြန်လည်တက်ဖြတ်နေတာတွေဟာမြန်မာပြည်သမိုင်းမှာလည်းအလွန်တရာမှနာကြီးစရာကောင်းလာပါတယ်အခုဆိုရင်မြန်မာပြည်နယ်စပ်တွေမှာစစ်ရှောင်စခန်းတွေဒုက္ခသည်စခန်းတွေတိုင်းရင်းသားနယ်မြေတွေမှာလူဦးရေအစမတန်များပြားသလိုကျန်းမာရေးစောင့်ရှောက်မှုတွေစာဝတ်နေရေးတွေကြက်တဲမှုတွေကလည်းလိုအပ်ချက်များစွာရှိနေပါတယ်ကျမတို့မြန်မာပြည်ကပြည်သူတွေဟာဒီမိုကရေစီပြန်လည်ရရှိဖို့ငြိမ်းချမ်းစွာဆန္ဒပြတောင်းဆိုတော့လေအာဏာသိမ်းစစ်ကောင်ဆောင်ကပြည်သူများကိုအကြမ်းဖက်တပ်ဖြတ်ညှဉ်းပန်းနှိပ်စက်သည့်အတွက်တည်တဲ့သူကတည်ကိုလက်အင်္ဂါချို့ရင်းသူတွေကချို့ရင်းနေအိမ်စွန့်ခွာထွက်ပြေးသူတွေမိသားစုနဲ့ခွဲခွာပြီးနေရသူတွေကအများကြီးဖြစ်နေရပါပြီစစ်တပ်ကအာဏာသိမ်းပြီးအချိန်ကစပြီးမြန်မာပြည်ကပြည်သူတွေဟာတမန်လူအခွင့်အရေးတောင်မှဆုံးရှုံးနေရတဲ့အတွက်နိုင်ငံတကာမှကျမတို့မြန်မာပြည်ကိုလူသားချင်းစာနာထောက်ထားမှုအကူအညီများပေးအပ်ပါရန်နှင့်မြန်မာပြည်ဒီမိုကရေစီပြန်လည်ရရှိဖို့NUG အစိုးရကိုမြန်မာပြည်တရားဝင်အစိုးရအဖြစ်လက်ခံပေးကြဖို့နိုင်ငံတကာကလူကြီးမင်းများကိုကျမတောင်းဆိုအပ်ပါတယ်ထို့အပြင်ကျမတို့မြန်မာပြည်လိုပဲလူကရိန်းကိုလည်းကူညီထောက်ပံ့မှုတွေပေးဆောင်ပေးဖို့အနုအညွန့်ပန်ကြားအပ်ပါတယ်အခုလိုလက်ရှိမြန်မာပြည်မှာပေါ့နော်ခံစားနေရတဲ့အာဏာရှင်ညှဉ်းပန်းနှိပ်စက်မှုများကိုလူမျိုးတုံးတပ်ဖြတ်မှုများကိုနိုင်ငံတော်မှသိစေရန်ဒီအစီအစဉ်ကိုနော်ဥဆောင်ပေးကြပါတော့လူကြီးမင်းများဝိုင်းဝန်းကူညီပေးကြပါတော့လူကြီးမင်းများတဦးတယောက်ချင်းစီကိုမြန်မာပြည်သူကိုစားကျေးဇူးတင်ရှိကြောင်းပြောကြရင်ညီကုန်းချုပ်လိုက်ပြစီရှင်ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်အားလုံး
Thank you, Matuza. What Matuza, Notutu, Nickey has highlighted is that there's a strong message coming out from the people of Myanmar. For this report, Fortify Rights and Schell Center also interviewed a railway service worker, and he has been with the railway for more than 25 years as a government servant before joining CDM. And he was also one of the CDM leaders among the railway workers in Yangon. And when interviewed, he said, "We have made up our mind to resist the military council. We will resist them until they fail. And we would like to tell the international community that." And I think Matuza has, what she has shared in her remark is in line with what other CDMers and human rights defenders have in their mind. Myanmar human rights defenders, CDMers, and Myanmar people in general are ordinary people taking extraordinary risks. And they have not given up their fight for democracy. The courage that they are displaying today is in the face of daily atrocities. They need to know they are not abandoned in their efforts to stop the military from committing further human rights abuses. And they need to know that support comes from the global community. The Myanmar military junta is committing international crimes with impunity, and this poses a threat to international peace and security. Nowhere is Safe makes 28 recommendations to end and remedy the junta's nationwide attack on its civilian population, including recommendations to UN member states, UN Security Council, ASEAN, and others. So I would like to remind everyone that we are taking questions through chat, the Zoom chat, and also on Facebook. But before moving on to Q&A, I would like to reiterate some key recommendations of the report. Firstly, to help end the attack and prevent the situation from worsening, the UN Security Council need to immediately pass a resolution to impose a global arms embargo, as well as targeted sanctions. The situation has to be referred to the ICC for investigation and possible prosecution. Secondly, UN member states, especially ASEAN, they should engage the NUG government, the National Unity Government of Myanmar. They should not provide any form of political legitimacy to the Myanmar junta. The Myanmar people's wish needs to be respected. And lastly, the Myanmar military should immediately and unconditionally release all political prisoners. Min Aung Hlaing and his junta should immediately step down and cooperate with international justice mechanisms. Now, I'm now going to open up the floor for questions. And if you would like to directly ask a question, please raise your hand using the Zoom button and we'll unmute your microphone. So since the beginning of the event, a few questions have come in on Zoom privately to me. So here I would like to read out the first question and give the floor to the speakers to see if anyone would like to answer the question. The first question, you have presented a large collection of evidence. How could this report influence the ongoing accountability mechanism? So anyone from the panel would like to take this question? Matt, Roger?
I'll start on that, and then if Matt or Nickey or Htoo or Thuzar have any thoughts. But you know, the IIMM is doing fantastic investigative work. We're in touch and communicate with them, and they're open to receiving information and evidence and vetting that. And they've received over 1 million pieces of unique evidence, and you know, they've come out and said that their preliminary investigation also supports a finding of crimes against humanity. And you know, I have confidence that that organization is on top of the work. And you know, our report, our work, I believe, like other reports that I have had the opportunity to work on with Fortify Rights, are important to help move the narrative forward. And the level of detail in this report certainly, I think, can help achieve that. Matt, do you have anything to add, or Nickey?
Yeah, thanks, Roger. I would just add that we will be using this report to try to create the conditions necessary for the International Criminal Court, for the Prosecutor's Office of the International Criminal Court, to pick up what's called the 12.3 declaration. So the National Unity Government of Myanmar has delegated jurisdiction to the ICC investigate and possibly prosecute crimes dating back to 2002 and into the future. And so it's incumbent upon the prosecutor's office to pick up that declaration and to move it forward. And in order for that to happen, certain conditions, if you will, must be established. And so we will be using this report to try to make that happen, try to encourage governments to make that happen. But first and foremost, the evidence that's presented in this report, in combination with the genocide determination that the US government announced on Monday, should be enough to create the political will to propose from UN Security Council member states to propose a resolution at the Security Council that would mandate a global arms embargo against the Myanmar military, impose economic sanctions against the military, and refer the situation to the ICC. If a Security Council member state, Russia or China, were to veto that resolution, that would create conditions to move the situation or to move the issue over to the UN General Assembly. We saw this happen recently with Ukraine, with a resolution regarding Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, which Russia, of course, vetoed. So that's another way that this report, I think, will factor into some of that advocacy that we'll be doing with others from Myanmar and other human rights organizations.
Thank you. We have a question from Thomas Sodaski. Thomas is asking about what mechanisms should we be pushing our governments to enact to hold the junta responsible and return to civilian government. So anyone from the panel? Nickey?
Yeah, I think this is really important. Right now, the Fortify Rights and Schell Center already established the evidence. So by using that evidence, we need to accelerate our advocacy. Sometimes, I mean, I'm now in Europe, and when I have a conversation with friends, so they actually don't know what is happening in Myanmar. So right now, these evidence are coming out of Myanmar, and everyone at every international level should use these evidence to continue their advocacy, talk to their government, and also drive with our campaign. So right now, I mean, because of the crisis in Ukraine, I see the lack of media presentation of, Myanmar situation. So right now, I think this report will increase the media attention what is going on in Myanmar. And also, for the advocacy purpose, every government around the world, they already fail to prevent atrocities, genocide against Rohingya. So right now, the same military who committed the genocide, every human rights violation in Myanmar still continuing with their impunity. So this is the time, these evidence coming out of Myanmar, we must definitely use these evidence to continue, every aspect of other advocacy to invite every government to the method, find the solution, to end Myanmar military impunity.
Thank you. The next question is from Tin Za Wu from PLAN, the Public Legal Aid Network. This question is directed to Tom Andrews, but he is not here with us on the panel right now. So I think the other panelists can pick this question up. So she's asking, what realistic and effective advocacy can we as civil society do to get real actions from the UNSC, the UN Security Council? And the UN Security Council feedback is mostly focused on the role of the ASEAN. So with this kind of ongoing framework, what kind of way forward we could expect from ASEAN that could put the Myanmar military junta out of the regional equation so that they can respect people of Myanmar?
I see that the question also references the UN member states arms transfers to the Myanmar enabling atrocities report. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that there are member states that continue to provide weapons to the military junta, and strong advocacy to push forward a resolution. And one of the things that I know Tom speaks about is that there is a need for a resolution that imposes a comprehensive arms embargo. But if countries cannot get behind that, if there are those outliers that feel like they need to continue to sell outlandish equipment like submarines to the Myanmar junta, at least every country on earth should be able to agree that arms that are actively killing civilians in Myanmar, the armored personnel carriers, the aircraft jets, the jet fuel itself, missiles, rockets, other weapons should be cut off. And the Security Council has leverage to and has the ability to write an embargo any way that it wants. And that's one option. Is, you know, of course a full arms embargo is important and would be the preferred route, but at least putting forward a resolution that recognizes the toll that weapons are having on the civilian population, and those specific weapons that are going to attack civilians, I think would be an important step.
Thank you. The next question would be for Htoo. Htoo, this question is on the experience of the Karen people, having long history of persecution at the hands of the Myanmar military and being forced to flee to neighboring countries. So what is the situation for Karen who have been forced to flee the junta? What are neighboring countries doing in response to the coup?
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. I'm very sad now. I received a picture of the 70-year-old girl. Her house was explored. You see the 70-year-old girl. While I'm talking, I received this horrific picture. Fighting is happening now. Fighting is happening. The mortar shelling into the civilian place. And like Fortify Rights report, there is nowhere is safe for them. They have no place to flee, and there is no former IDP shed, IDP camps or site were established at the border, and they cannot flee to Timeside due to the many regulations from Timeside. So they are living under the high risk by the airstrike and shelling. So this is just, and this morning we received this girl had explored. And first week of March, we received a horrific photo. A 6-month pregnant woman were killed, and a 3-month baby had passed off, had explored. So every day, every week, this is a shelling, a strike in current state. So you can imagine that where they will be going. They are living at the Moai River bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Htoo. That's a very emotional moment for Htoo, but this is also something that she, other human rights defender, people of Myanmar, they are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. The kind of atrocities, the kind of violence, it's happening every single day for them. Now we have a question coming in from Yuchi Nita, who's a journalist. Yuchi is asking about what is our recommendation to the ASEAN envoy, who recently finished his first visit to Myanmar and has met the SAC leaders. So Nickey, Matthew, do you want to take this question?
I can say a quick few words and then pass over to you, Nickey. I think ASEAN has a long history of not interfering in each other's, in other member states' internal affairs. But I think one of the key messages right now that the envoy and that ASEAN overall really needs to grapple with in a more urgent manner is that when it comes to mass atrocity crimes, there is no level of state sovereignty that should be preventing collective action to end these atrocities. It has been going on for too long, and there have been some signs from certain ASEAN member states that they are taking a different approach, that they are fed up with the Myanmar military's brutality and atrocities. And I think there are some signs of hope there, but as a bloc, ASEAN can and needs to do more. We understand why certain governments, including the UN Security Council, was acting in deference to ASEAN. They didn't want to be seen as overstepping ASEAN. But again, people are dying on a daily basis when the Myanmar military is attacking people on a daily basis, imprisoning people on a daily basis, attempting to take over the country. There's a level of urgency that needs to be acted upon. And if ASEAN is stalling, that should not stall other governments. It should not stall the UN Security Council. Nickey, I don't know if you want to add something, please.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Actually, I normally have a kind of conversation with my colleague from Myanmar. My colleague from Myanmar, they never trusted in ASEAN effort to bring any solution to the current crisis in Myanmar. So the ASEAN's, people in Myanmar, whenever I have a conversation, ASEAN is a gang of dictator, not really interested in solving in Myanmar. One of the main messages I received from my friend is ASEAN shouldn't give any legitimacy to any space or legitimacy to the SAC. So even ASEAN dealing with SAC is, a kind of providing recognition for, they are having a kinds of advantages, that kinds of conversation with ASEAN. So people in Myanmar, what I see, what I understand is they don't want any, they call the ASEAN 5-point bullshit, because so these, 5 point will not make any solution, to end any atrocity in Myanmar. So that's the message I daily, conversation from my friends. So ASEAN approach, they need a more realistic, tangible to allow the cross-border aids, like Htoo mentioned, Thailand is not really taking the receiving the IDB, India, China, Bangladesh, so people in Myanmar daily they are suffering with these mass atrocity. But ASEAN, country, if they want to support Myanmar, they should allow the cross-border aids, humanitarian assistance to help these people, not helping Myanmar military junta.
Thank you, Nickey. A question just came in from Mark Inke from Mizima. So the question is directed to Matuza. So the interpreter, can you translate this to her? Is the army forcing soldiers' wives to take up arms to guard bases? Are the army forcing soldiers' wives and family to do other things? Are soldiers worried that their families will be harmed if they do not carry out orders? And have there been any retaliation against soldiers' families? Thank you. And Matuza, over to you.
Oh, ရှိပါရှင် Oh, ကျမပြောချင်တာကတော့ဗောနော်တက်ထဲမှာလက်ရှိတာဝန်ထမ်းဆောင်နေတဲ့မြန်မာစစ်တပ်ထဲမှာဆိုရင်မရောက်နိုင်လက်အောက်ခံလူတွေအားလုံးဗောနော်ဒီကျမတို့နဲ့အတူတူပြည်သူနဲ့အတူတူပူးပေါင်းပြီးတော့စီရင်ဝင်လာဖို့အတွက်ကိုပြောချင်ပါတယ်ရှင်ဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါ
No problem, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. No problem at all. So I would take 2 more questions and then we will wrap up the question and answer. So the next question is coming from Sayedu Karim. Sayedu Karim is from Bangladesh, Rohingya refugee camp. And he would like to ask that in recent, the US State Secretary Lincoln has declared genocide and crimes against humanity committed against Rohingya minority by Burmese military members. So he's asking what will be the future of Rohingya refugee and what actions will be taken against military and perpetrators by international community and Human Rights Commission. Maybe we can have Roger answering this question.
Sure, Vanessa, thank you. Happy to take a first shot at it. The genocide determination, is obviously a very long time coming, and our hope is that we can use that as a point of advocacy. And okay, you've made this determination. What's next? And how do we use that determination to push forward additional actions? What additional sanctions targets? How can we stop legitimacy of the junta, countries from legitimizing the junta? How can we stop the funds, and how can we stop the weapons? And so with this genocide determination, it's, I hope, a springboard to move in stronger advocacy directions and to really target in a focused way, our points around specific sanctions targets. We've talked a lot about Myanmar oil and gas enterprise and multinational companies that continue to engage with the Myanmar junta from around the world, not just Western countries. But you have this determination coming out that makes loud and clear what we all know and what the Rohingya and what the people of Myanmar have known for years, decades, that they're dealing with a criminal organization on the other end in these business arrangements, and it's time for those to stop. So I believe and hope that is one outcome that can come away from that genocide determination.
Do we have anything to add, Matt, Nickey? No. We can take the last question on hate speech, Nickey. So Olivia is asking, to what extent are hate speech or other social media disinformation involved in the actions of policy, police, and soldiers? So how has hate speech and social media disinformation influenced their actions?
Yeah, this is a very tough question. Currently, I'm observing social media and any kinds of hate speech. So normally, I'm one of the victim or target because I all the time I promote the human rights norms and value, and also all the time against the military junta. So sometimes I have been labeled or described as a Delan or informer to the military, but also, yeah, a kind of, situation like the forces, social media forces are targeting activists and human rights defenders just to take a will from the, not promoting or not documenting their atrocity. So they trying to attack these people. And also right now, CDMOs, there are a lot of, so I from my understanding, from my analysis, so some of the account like Hanyang Wu, account is based in Russia or China or something, some kinds of, technical support from these countries, and they are continuing monitoring on social media, particularly to attack every resistant forces against the gender. So that kinds of situation happening, and that's why on social media, and also we are using a kind of communication like a signal for our protection. And also, people in Myanmar who are still remaining, who are still continuing their non-violent activity, who are not joining the armed struggle. So they have to relocate their location because of, these hate speech, trying to attack them. And if they respond on social media and if they appear on social media and they got arrested and some kinds of, so my point is, as state administration council is heavily using technology from the first world, or from Russia or China or Israel or Canada, or I don't know, but they use these technology and tracking the people in Myanmar, activists and human rights defender. So, and also, at the same time, they use the hate speech against these people. So if I'm disappointed And if I write some reaction on social media, so they can take these comment and post, and they can locate my location or where I am or something like this. So these are happening in Myanmar.
Thank you. I know I mentioned that this is the last question, but may I take the liberty as the moderator to have a final question from myself to Htoo. So I want to hear from Htoo, what more can the international community do to support grassroots organization like KHRG, who has been on the ground and doing amazing work. So a message from you, Htoo, to the rest of us.
Thank you, Vanessa. From international community, we want them to support us in any means, like in terms of advocacy. Right now, you will see that for Ukraine issue and UN agency like UNICEF, they have strong advocate for the children who were suffering from this war, right? But from Myanmar, we hardly see, like I show you the picture, many children were killed during the conflict that happening right now every day at the border. And where is the advocacy from the UN agency based in Burma? We want to collaborate with them. We want them to advocate for the children who are suffering and women, elderly people who are suffering this one. And international community, now we all know that globally, informations or news are covering Ukraine a lot. Myanmar information is not, like that compared to Ukraine. So how much people like will be killed every day, and how much more suffer in the prisons with the torture, killing case. So please help us in advocacy in any situations in their place. I know that they have bigger voice, better understanding how to help us, and cross-border is also not officially permitted until now. So the IDP display at the border over 117 display throughout current state, they receive minimum of support. So international community and donors, they need to review their policy about the cross-border and work with the government who can make decisions for the better cross-border aid situations and also advocate for the people of Myanmar life. Thank you.
Thank you, Htoo. In closing, I would like to thank all speakers for joining us this morning. Also, special thanks to our interpreter and everyone on the Fortify Rights team, juggling with everything's happening for the last few months and today, this morning. So please download, read, and share the report if you haven't. In the next few days, we will continue to upload many social media posts on the report, including a summary film, which we have shown at the beginning of this event, so it will be shared with everyone. Please also help us share our work as we continue to press for a stronger cause of international actions. Thank you for joining us this morning, and have a great day. Thanks.